Hey everyone, this is WobblyWallaby. Today I'll show you my free-to-play Khalitzburg build for Ragnarok mobile with recommended progression. This build was able to solo 2 floors of Legend Isles, which I didn't think was possible with this type of account. This account has 15% deposit and only 4 out of 7 for core hero passive. This is definitely one of the best physical DPS classes that's also free-to-play friendly. Now let's start off against the Legend Golem. I am shredding through his HP and also picking up all the roses for more damage. Survivability is an issue with Khalitzburg, but if your DPS is high enough and you can time your anti-death foods properly, then you can still do well. Also, if you have a Saint, then you can deal with all 3 floors of Legend, but for this video I wanted to show the power with just how far it can go solo. The golem goes down quickly, and I'll show my setup for that briefly as proof and then show more details after. I want to avoid editing so people can verify this is the setup I used. For foods, I am using Rapid Attack Alloy and the normal Precision Stone. The Precision Stone is very important for large monsters since you do less damage without it. I am using Water Converters and Bee Meals. For food, I use 5 Satisfied Feasts for the attack and penetration, then 1 anti-death food. Next, here's my gear overview. My challenge was to not use anything beyond Refined 12, no mini or MVP cards, and all headwear can be bought with Zenny or earned through story mode. I wanted to see just how far I could get without using any Time Wish Machine items. Next for Shadow Equipment, again nothing beyond Refined 12. I use Combustible Knife for Oracle Mirror, and Waist Size for Ancient Relic, which you can earn from doing Palace of Beauty. Next is my Adventure Handbook. I have 1507 attack and 15% deposit. I purposely tried to keep it as low as possible, and in the past I did Wrathcracy at 7/7 core hero passive and 15% deposit as well, but I couldn't clear the golem solo since the DPS just wasn't high enough. Next for attributes, I max Agi first, since Wish Flower scales off of that, then balance between Vit for survivability and Strength for damage. I didn't need to invest in Dex since I had over 500 hit for Legend instances. With self buffs and foods, I have 20,000 attack. Next I have 248 Agi, and it would be higher if I unlocked more classes to get the bonuses. I have 104.5% penetration, 51.5% skill damage increase, 109.8% damage, 99.7% physical damage increase, and 249.5% ignore defense. Khalitzburg is one of the best classes to hit all the critical stats that you need for Legend instances, and that's what makes her one of the best free-to-play classes as well. Next for skills, I show I'm only at 4 out of 7 core hero passive. I think at a minimum you need to be level 4. And it's great that even if you aren't at the max 7/7, this class is still crazy strong. Next in Prepare for Elite, I have Night of Glory and Flower of Desperation. That is in my manual bar. Then I have Whisper of Rose for AoE and Burst, Wish Flower for Burst, Memory of Petals, First Aid for dealing with Angeling, and Echo of Petals for dropping 3 Rose Petals before a battle. Next for Auto, I have Memory of Petals, Echo of Petals, and Prepare for Elite. Next, let's go in depth into my gear. For offhand, I use Dragonbone Shield with the 18% physical damage increase random attribute. For card, I use the Water Monster card for dealing 10% extra damage against fire monsters. Next for armor, I use the Voodoo Armor for the ignore defense and happen to get the 20% damage to large monster random attribute, which I find the most flexible. I tried with other armors, but this one tended to be the best because of the random attribute of damage to large monsters. If I had another armor that had that random attribute, I would use that instead since you already have a lot of ignore defense. I have the Morale Enchant, and you'll have enough ignore defense already, so this is optional for PvE. For card, I use the Archer Skeleton Star card for the attack percentage. Next I use Leader's Pauldron, which you can replace with the Brave Warrior's Pauldron as well. I have the 12% skill damage random attribute. For card, I use the Chunky Tree Star card for the attack percentage. Next for footgear, I use Dragon Slayer War Boots with the 6% penetration random attribute. For card I use the Water Spirit Turtle card for the 8% move speed. Next for accessories I use the Pendant of Ugin with the physical damage plus 4.5% increased random attribute. For card I use the Moonlight Tendrillion card for the skill damage. You can use water accessories instead, but this account just doesn't have the maximum water attack random attributes. For the next accessory I use the same accessory and card. Next for weapon I use the Time of Birth tier 5, which is the best in slot. For card I use the Minora's Star card for extra damage to large monsters and MVP monsters, and the Minora's card for dealing with large sized monsters. Next for headwear I use the White Knight Helm for the MVP damage and the Andre Star card for the penetration percentage. Next for face I use Silent Sinking for the skill damage. Next for mouth I use Butterfly Breath for the damage to MVP monsters. You can get this from doing the Eclage story. Next for back I use Siren Touch for the damage to MVP monsters. Next for tail I use Summer Banana Split for the damage to MVP monsters. Next for shadow equipment I use Rosa Change since that's all I have. Skeleton Bracer tier 5 is optimal since it gives you more survivability since you can trigger anti-death every 30 seconds. Next the Chosen Armor for the attack percentage. This combos well with the Ring of Loyalty for the 5% attack set bonus. Next for garment I use White Duke's Manteau for the skill damage. Next I use Ring of Contract for the attack percentage. Next I use Fox Teeth only because this is what I have on this account. Ring of Loyalty would be better. Next for Oracle Mirror I use Combustible Knife for the penetration percentage. I would also instead use Bill if you have it for damage to MVP monsters, that's a very popular choice. Next for Relic I use Waist Size for the strength, attack, and attack percentage. As you can see, this is a very budget friendly set which I purposely made very low just to show you the power of Khalitzburg. Next for Advanced Ruins, here's my setup, and I'll show you that my ruins are pretty average. Here's my Memory of Petals. Next is Secret Language Rose Star Ruin. Next the Rose Character Star Ruin. Next Echo of Petals Ruin. Next Wish Flower Star Ruin. And Flower of Desperation Ruin. As you can see, I didn't win the lottery on some amazing ruin, she's just that strong. Next for Arcane Ruins I have Whiteblade Ruin, which does well against bosses. I think for free to play accounts, if you can just focus on one, the Whiteblade Ruin is the best. Next is my free to play progression recommendations, which I'll show on floor 2 since I had to use a plus 15 gears and gachas from the Time Wish machine. I couldn't clear it with my previous build. And I think honestly those are the best things to invest in first. I'll show my gear after I clear this boss. This time around I use fire accessories and use the fire converter to deal more damage. I also use Glutonious Imp and then item switch to Honey Bunny when the target is below 70% HP. When there's a red AoE, make sure you run away. I think they changed floor 2 so you don't get transformed from the raise and phase to an insta die after. That's how I'm able to attack after. The Sea Spear goes down and I'll show you my gear. I changed my offhand card, this one gives me plus 3 damage to large monsters. I also switched to fire accessories, and then I also used ghost damage in cards. I also used gachas from the Time Wish machine. As part of my shadow equipment, I had also added my plus 15 St. Mary's cloth shoes. Next I'll go into detail. Homestead of Snowy Owl is one of my favorite and most used headwears, so it's definitely worth the investment for the extra wind, earth, water, and fire attack. The bonus from inferior elements also makes this best in slot when it triggers. Next I use Winter Crown for the skill damage. This can help you achieve the 50% skill damage, which is ideal for legend runs. Next is Honey Bunny, which I use for the skill damage. When the target is above 70%, I use Glutonious Imp for the penetration and the final damage. Next, I use the +6 Goodwill gift box for damaged MVP monsters. This is also a great back that's available in the Time Wish machine, although you do need to refine it to 6. Finally, I use Rock Bunny for MVP damage. This is a very flexible tail since you can use it for auto attack classes, skill damage classes, and even for farming. With this setup, doing 2 floors solo is as far as I could get. Her DPS can't deal with the 3rd floor or Museum, although I did try Museum floor 1. Her survivability isn't there compared to Wrathcracy, so you will need a Saint to support you. But for some legend instances, you can time your anti-death well to avoid dying. That's especially for Isles floor 1 and 2, you can time your anti-death quite well. But for Museum floor 1, this is definitely way harder. If you're in a party and looking for some high DPS class at a lower deposit and you lack runes to make a 7/7 core hero passive for other hero classes, then definitely give Khalitzburg a try. It's definitely worth investing, and she gets way stronger at 7/7 as well. But do be aware that your survivability is worse than Wrathcracy, so for some instances like PSR or Oracle Dungeon, you may be dying a ton, but if your party is okay to support you, then you'll do fine. I'm glad that the devs made this class since it gives free-to players a chance to deal high damage, especially if you're struggling to clear instances in the past. Also, luckily you do not need 7/7 to be powerful for core hero passive, even 4 out of 7 is possible. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Here's a video that I'd recommend. If you want more Khalitzburg guides, check out this playlist over here.